Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump condemning the fatal stabbing of a Ukrainian refugee living in North Carolina. That tragic incident, cashless bail, and media coverage of these recent events, all front and center at the White House today. Mario Tzu reports. The Trump administration outlines its plan on getting to the root of chronic childhood diseases. Jason Blair has the key takeaways from the new report released by the Make America Healthy Again Commission. Israeli forces strike Hamas leaders in Qatar. The White House says they notified Qatar before the strikes, but Qatar says the warning didn't come in time. Jason Perry with the update. And at a hearing on Capitol Hill, lawmakers release a video of a UAP or UFO in flight off the coast of Yemen. A missile that's fired at it appears to bounce off. Luis Martinez brings us the highlights.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump condemning the fatal stabbing of a Ukrainian refugee living in North Carolina. Joining us now live is NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu. Good evening, Mari. What is the latest update on the Charlotte attack?
Good evening to you too, Tiff. The Department of Justice is charging the man who fatally stabbed 23-year-old Irina Zarutska in August. The suspect, who is caught on surveillance video in the North Carolina light rail where the murder took place, is being charged with one count of committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system. Attorney General Pam Bondi is saying in a statement, quote, "We will seek the maximum penalty for this unforgivable act of violence. He will never again see the light of day as a free man." And the White House today is also condemning the attack, calling it, quote, "pure evil on full display." Let's take a look at what the administration is saying today.
This beautiful, innocent 23-year-old young woman was a Ukrainian refugee who had recently fled her country for a chance at a safer life and a promising new beginning here in the United States of America. But tragically, a public transportation system in a major American city was more dangerous than the active war zone that she left.
We have to respond with force and strength. We have to be vicious just like they are. It's the only thing they understand. 24 of the top 25 most dangerous cities in America are run by Democrat mayors. 50 people were murdered in Chicago in recent weeks, with hundreds being shot.
President Trump, on the topic of the fatal North Carolina stabbing, is also criticizing cashless bail. In August, the president signed an executive order directing Attorney General Pam Bondi to identify federal funds that are being given to states with cashless bail policies in order to potentially suspend them. The Charlotte light rail attacker was free on cashless bail after having been arrested 14 times prior to this in North Carolina. Charlotte's local news station is reporting that the killer's mother says he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and that the court should not have let her son out in the community, knowing that he had mental health issues. Here's more from the White House on the topic today.
This is madness. This monster should have been locked up, and Irina should still be alive. But Democrat politicians, liberal judges, and weak prosecutors would rather virtue signal than lock up criminals and protect their communities. And perhaps most shamefully of all, the majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative.
Press Secretary Levitt is comparing the media coverage of this North Carolina stabbing to the media narrative surrounding the Daniel Penny case from 2023. She's also denouncing cashless bail as a, quote, failed experiment. And in other news, the president is expected to, any moment now, sign a proclamation following up on the Make America Healthy Again Commission report, which was released earlier today. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. Should there be accountability for judges who release repeat offenders? Wyoming Republican Congresswoman Harriet Hageman weighs in on NTD's Capitol Report with Steve Lance. Join us at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for full analysis. The White House Maha Commission announces a strategy to address the root causes of chronic childhood disease. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
The medical community is thirsty to talk about the root causes that we don't talk about.
The Maha Commission releases its second report, the Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy.
Nothing is more important than the health of our children.
The report identifies, quote, 4 potential drivers behind the rise in childhood chronic disease that present the clearest opportunities for progress. This includes poor diet, chemical exposure, lack of physical activity and chronic stress, and over-medicalization.
We spend nearly as much in our country for health care as all the other nations in the world combined. And yet we have the worst health outcomes.
When over 75% of America's youth between 17 and 24 years old are ineligible for military service because of obesity, poor physical fitness, or mental health challenges, you have not only a health epidemic on your hands, you have a national security epidemic on your hands.
Our commission team met with over 120 groups at the White House, engaged Maha moms directly, and received countless recommendations from industry and advocates that were thoughtfully considered.
Haley says the strategy will use 4 pillars to create systemic change.
1, driving innovation through research. 2, policies to realign incentives and systems. 3, increase public awareness and knowledge. And 4th, private sector collaboration.
FDA Director Dr. Martin McCary reiterated that his department is working to change the food pyramid.
We're working with USDA to change the broken food pyramid, maybe one of the greatest sources of misinformation in modern American history.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Chief Justice John Roberts today keeping in place the Trump administration's decision to freeze nearly $5 billion in foreign aid. The High Court order is temporary as it's responding to an emergency appeal and will remain in place during a lower court trial. U.S. District Judge Amir Ali ruled last week that Congress would have to approve the decision to withhold the funding. But the brief ruling today may suggest the justices will reverse a lower court ruling that finds the freeze was illegal. In other Supreme Court action today, the justices agreed to take up an emergency appeal over a ruling against the president's global tariffs. The High Court said it would hear arguments in the case during the first week of November. In a major development in the Middle East, Israeli forces launched airstrikes in Qatar, reportedly killing leaders of the Hamas terrorist group. This comes after Hamas claimed responsibility for a deadly attack at a bus stop near Jerusalem. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
The city of Doha, the capital of Qatar, known for its unique skyline and clean streets, was struck by Israeli forces on Tuesday. Smoke was seen rising over the horizon as an emergency vehicle made its way through traffic. Israel said they conducted a precision strike in Qatar, targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization. Video of the attack shows one strike, followed by a second on a building where Hamas leaders were reportedly living. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said those Hamas leaders were the ones who planned the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th.
At the beginning of the war, I promised that Israel would reach those who perpetrated this horror. And today, Israel and I have kept that promise.
And he added this.
There was a time when Jews could be murdered with impunity, but since the founding of the State of Israel, those days are over.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that the U.S. notified Qatar prior to the strike.
President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace, and quickly. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
Qatar, which has been a key mediator between Israel and Hamas for ceasefire negotiations to the war in the Gaza Strip, issued a statement after the strikes. An anchor for Qatari state-run media read the statement.
The state of the Qatar condemns in the strongest wording the cowardly Israeli attack that targeted residential buildings, where a number of members of the political bureau of Hamas movement live in the Qatari capital, Doha.
And in a post on X, the spokesman for Qatar's foreign ministry said the U.S. didn't notify them before the attack, saying, "The statements being circulated about Qatar being informed of the attack in advance are baseless. The call from a U.S. official came during the sound of explosions caused by the Israeli attack in Doha." Qatar also said on X that, quote, "It will not tolerate this reckless Israeli behavior." Meanwhile, some Israelis expressed concern that Israel's strike in Qatar could hurt the chances of a deal to release the remaining hostages held in the Gaza Strip. Jason Perry, NTD News.
A Russian airstrike reportedly killed 24 elderly people in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say they were waiting in line for their pensions in a village in the eastern part of the country. NTD's international correspondent Arian Posdar has the update.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a guided bomb struck the village of Yarova, about 15 miles from the city of Slovansk.
The Russians knew exactly where they were hitting, and they saw exactly that they were hitting civilians. These were ordinary people who received pensions.
Zelensky is now urging allies to increase pressure on Moscow to end the war.
Without new sanctions, there will be no progress in diplomacy and in all efforts to end the war. And time is of the essence. For too long, there has been no increase in pressure on Russia that would hit the Russian military machine noticeably and without delay.
Russia did not immediately comment on the attack. Moscow has denied targeting civilians, although tens of thousands have died since its full-scale invasion in February of 2022. A resident recalls the moment of the strike.
The postman came to hand out pensions. Around 40 people gathered here. A drone flew by and flew away, and then there was a hit. There were a lot of people here. They say 24 people died.
Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The House Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets held its first hearing today on Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, or UAP. It's the third time since 2023 that Congress is addressing the growing evidence of the government's knowledge of UAPs. Our Washington correspondent Luis Adoro Martinez has the details.
Future generations will look back at this moment and ask what we did when presented with the unknown. Did we look away, embarrassed or afraid, or did we pursue the truth with courage?
Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, the chairman of the Task Force on Federal Secrets, made it clear from the offset of the hearing that UAPs are real and the federal government has not been transparent about what it knows about these phenomena. The witnesses and experts during today's hearing had a clear goal for today's proceedings.
There are three goals: fund independent research. 2, end secrecy and overclassification. 3, protect the witnesses.
I spoke to members of the task force on the main obstacles to government transparency on UAPs, and this is what they had to say.
A lot of stuff that a lot of information people are trying to get have been stonewalled at several different levels. So
it's the government, it's just power and control and leadership. I'm convinced nothing's going to happen until we have a president that'll just say, turn them loose. Every aspect of it, when we go into the SCIF, we meet with people that tell us things that are going on, and then publicly they'll say they don't exist to the American public. So I think they're doing a real disservice there.
And do you think whistleblowers are in danger of coming forward?
Oh, yeah, sure they are. And I think that's the key to it, that and a president that's going to just turn loose the books, because I don't know how we protect whistleblowers when I can't pass the legislation to do just that.
Okay, so you think that President Trump could do something to have all this information?
100%. He holds the keys to the kingdom on this thing.
Lawmakers acquired and shared evidence of engagements in between the U.S. military and UAPs from as recent as October of 2024. In a video shown by Congressman Burleson, an MQ-9 Reaper drone is seen tracking a flying orb. A second drone then fires a Hellfire missile at it, and as the video shows, the missile appears to bounce off of the UAP and continue its flight.
What we need to do is pass the UAP Disclosure Act. That needs to be on the bill that's coming this week, the National Defense Authorization Act. We need to pass Tim Burch's bill that is a Witness Protection Act, and I think that will go a long ways.
Congressman Burleson's amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2026 would prohibit the federal government from destroying evidence it has acquired on UAPs and would mandate that the federal government release such evidence within 25 years of collecting it. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life? What do everyday Americans make of Congress's push for transparency on UAPs? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
Do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life?
It's definitely possible. If the universe is as big as they say it is, I mean, the chances of it being possible are greater than it not.
I've seen the balls of light, the various pictures, stayed in touch with it, and I'm sure a lot of them could be put down to natural phenomenon, but not being present with my own eyes, I don't know.
It's right here. Ancient Egyptian, right? They know the best. I mean, I'm from Ohio, so, you know, we have Wright Pat Air Force Base. We're known to have that kind of stuff, so I'm a firm believer. My grandpa was in the Air Force, absolutely.
So did he give you any, like, classified information?
I mean, I can't tell you.
Flash?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Forget everything.
In Heber, Arizona, we've had an ongoing theory of an alien abduction. Allegedly, they were abducted and taken into a spaceship and examined.
I was at a takeaway food shop. I was waiting outside, and across the horizon there were two little dots coming from across the horizon, and one went straight up into the sky and disappeared, and the other very quickly disappeared across what we call the Blue Mountains.
What do you think about the fact that Congress is now pushing for more transparency on this matter?
I think it's awesome, honestly. I really think that we need to know about any kind of extraterrestrial, whatever, any different life form, you know. So
I think it would be a sideshow that they, you know, would it be something that deflect attention from something else at some time? Because right now there's a lot more that could be revealed by Congress. If they push on and they investigate, I think the scientists will find out more than Congress ever will.
I mean, I support it, again, if they have the time and resources, definitely, for sure. Maybe there might be some other in-house stuff that maybe they could focus on more, but on the side, you know, they could work towards it.
Are you optimistic?
Very. I think we're heading in a good direction.
The only thing that can, you know, get them to get the government to release information that they don't want to be released to the general public is through an act of Congress. The truth is always worth pursuing.
Coming up, the latest in the nationwide redistricting push. Missouri House legislators passed a map today in a final vote. The move could result in one Democrat losing a seat. Arlene Richards reports. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass endorses a former mayor in the 2026 California gubernatorial race. Bass and Antonio Villaraigosa have worked together for decades on issues affecting the city. Christina Corona has more on that announcement. And the son of imprisoned Hong Kong billionaire Jimmy Lai gives an update on his father's deteriorating health. That says he endures solitary confinement for what many U.S. officials call a 5-year show trial. Jack Bradley brings us that story when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Missouri legislators passed a new congressional map in a final vote today. The move could effectively drop one Democrat-controlled U.S. House seat. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
Missouri's legislature cast final votes on Tuesday afternoon on a proposed congressional map that Democrats believe is designed to unseat one of their own in the U.S. House of Representatives. Members of the Missouri House completed the vote early after a few hours of debate. But on Monday, legislators debated for several hours on different issues, including the proposed map, before coming to a preliminary vote.
By your vote of 89 yay and 63 nay, you have perfected and printed House Bill number 1.
The final vote on Tuesday was 90 yes and 65 no. House Bill number 1, sponsored by State Representative Dirk Deaton, proposes to split Kansas City into 3 congressional districts instead of the 2 in which it currently sits. Governor Mike Kehoe called a special session of the legislature last month to vote on the proposal. The session began on September 3rd, but it wasn't until Monday that they had the necessary quorum to advance the proposal. Several Republicans, including the Speaker Jonathan Patterson, joined Democrats in voting against the plan. Patterson's vote supports the majority in his district who don't favor the map. Democrats believe the newly proposed map is designed to make it easier for a Republican to beat U.S. Representative Emanuel Cleaver, a Democrat from Jackson County, in the 2026 election. Deaton said, "Don't blame the map."
And, you know, if the Democratic Party, if Democratic candidates aren't willing to look Missourians in the eye and speak to them where they are, speak to them and advocate for them, their values, and on the issues that they care about, then a map maker, wherever they might be, is the least of their worries.
Deaton also said the legislation is an attempt to improve the redistricting plan approved at the end of tumultuous debates in 2022. The proposal will go to the state Senate for more debate. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has endorsed former Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa in the 2026 California governor's race. Bass announced her support today at a press conference. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
We need a leader like Antonio Villaraigosa to be the next governor of California. Thank you.
On Tuesday, Mayor Karen Bass endorsed Antonio Villaraigosa for California governor, highlighting their shared history.
We have known each other and worked together our entire adult lives, many, many years before we ever thought that we would one day be elected officials. But when we were fighting on issues that were common to South LA and to East LA, we have always believed that the way you bring about change is you do it together. You build coalitions because our issues and our problems are similar.
She said Villaraigosa understands the legislature and the legislative process, has experience building relationships, and has a deep knowledge of the city.
We aren't here today because we're all friends. We're here today because these times are difficult. We face big challenges in this state.
Villaraigosa previously served 2 terms as mayor of Los Angeles from 2005 to 2013, where he focused on education and transportation projects.
We need the next governor to focus on the challenges we face that we've created. And I've said to people, it starts with safe neighborhoods. Every neighborhood deserves safety.
Villaraigosa said he will focus on improving the quality of schools. He pledged to work with Mayor Bass to rebuild the Palisades, collaborate with other mayors to rebuild Altadena, and address the ongoing insurance crisis.
We'll work hand in hand with you to address the homelessness we have in this town, which we ought to be ashamed of, every one of us, because it's not just here in this town, it's in every town in California.
Villaraigosa is up against several gubernatorial contenders, such as former Representative Katie Porter, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra, former state legislative leader Tony Atkins, state superintendent Tony Thurman, former controller Betty Yee, and conservative commentator Steve Hilton. Christina Corona, NTD News.
For nearly 5 years, Hong Kong billionaire Jimmy Lai has languished behind bars. That's after the Chinese regime implemented a draconian national security law on Hong Kong, suppressing political dissent. Now, Lai's son says his father's health is getting worse. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The son of imprisoned Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai is raising the alarm about his father's deteriorating health as he continues to stand trial, awaiting the outcome from behind bars for nearly 5 years. Sebastian Lai gave the update to reporters at a Tuesday press conference hosted by the America First Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. He said his 77-year-old father has diabetes, is held in poor conditions, and is subjected to prolonged solitary confinement without sunlight and extreme temperatures. He said, quote, "There's no upside for them to have him die in prison. In fact, if they wanted to show good faith, they should send him to the UK." It comes as President Trump is heading to the UK next week. Sebastian hopes that Trump and Prime Minister Starmer can work to free his father, saying, quote, "American leadership, in my belief, is why the UK called for my father's release." President Trump has said that he would do all that he can to free Jimmy Lai.
I am going to do everything I can to save him. I'm going to do everything. You know, he's a respected guy. He's a good guy.
Lai is a British citizen and the founder of the now defunct Apple Daily, a once major pro-democracy media outlet in Hong Kong, critical of the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP imposed a national security law on Hong Kong in 2020, essentially placing the city under its control and arresting hundreds of political dissidents. Billionaire Jimmy Lai is among them. In 2021, his assets were frozen and his paper forced to close. His son says Lai had the opportunity to flee arrest, but stayed in Hong Kong to expose the loss of human rights. Congressman Chris Smith also told reporters on Tuesday that in order to put more pressure on the CCP, trade should be linked with human rights. And one example of this is Smith's Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act. The bill would sanction those involved in forced organ harvesting, particularly the Chinese Communist Party's state-sponsored murder for organs targeting Falun Gong and Uyghurs.
Forced organ harvesting. You and Tom Cotton were the prime sponsors of a bill on the Senate side. And Xi Jinping is making billions by killing tens of thousands of young people, average age 28, each and every year, Falun Gong, and you know it.
For Lai's case, a verdict may come at any time, but several countries' officials and human rights groups worldwide describe it as an ongoing show trial of a political prisoner. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Coming up, the Make America Healthy Again Commission releases a roadmap to improve children's health. What are the key points in the 20-page report? And how can the Trump administration implement the proposed strategies effectively? Jeffrey Tucker, president of the Brownstone Institute, joins us to discuss when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A long-awaited second installment of the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again report was released today. It outlines strategies to tackle the childhood chronic disease epidemic and serves as a follow-up to the Maha Commission's first report, which came out back in May. Joining us now to unpack it all is Jeffrey Tucker, the founder and president of the Brownstone Institute, a nonprofit organization focused on post-pandemic freedom and reform. He's also the author of Life After Lockdown. Jeffrey, as always, thank you so much for joining us. First, what's your initial assessment of this new strategy report?
Well, I just saw it today. I was really impressed. My first thought was every parent and every grandparent in America needs to read this report immediately, because every word of it rings true. Every discussion of the problems and the solutions, they all seem correct to me. It's not partisan. There's no reason for anybody to be political about this report. It's a truth-telling, honest report about bad diet and chemical overexposure, lack of physical activity, which we all know about, and the stress of schooling, which is driving kids to psych meds, terrible ill health, and then the over-medicalization, which is also a part of this. Those things. Those are the four buckets, and all the kids' problems are put into one of these four buckets. It's a lot of those are very large buckets, but a very interesting, incisive, insightful, scientifically valid assessment of the health of America's kids. It's just really tragic it took this long for somebody to sound the alarm and to examine it. So this is a beginning, but it's a very good beginning.
And expanding on that, I want to dig into the four areas that are brought up. First, it was saying advancing critical research. So that includes launching an NIH initiative on chronic diseases and setting up a vaccine injury research program. Second, policy reforms like more oversight on direct-to-consumer pharma advertising. Third, increasing public awareness like updating OxyContin labeling to warn consumers about the dangers of chronic use. And fourth, partnering with the private sector. Is there anything that stands out to you? What do you think is still missing from this report?
Well, all those points you just mentioned are so important. We just watched a hearing today in the Senate about vaccines and vaccine injury. It's incredible how understudied this is and how little it's understood. They had a medical doctor testifying today who clearly knew almost nothing about the existing science on this, and And some of the best science is not being published, it's being suppressed because people are afraid to talk about it. Sometimes the biggest problems that exist are the ones you can talk about the least. That's one of the tragedies of our times. And the warning labels on drugs, I mean, people are being prescribed these kind of drugs constantly, daily, hourly, and without any awareness of what they're getting into. Psych meds in particular, we're engaged in these screenings where you go to the doctor and they ask you, if you've been feeling depressed and stressed, and then they suggest you pop a pill and you accept their authority. And next thing you know, you've got a lifetime of addiction and quasi-sedation that comes about from these medications. Nobody's trying to take away anybody's pills, drugs, vaccines, or anything else, but it'd be good to have informed consent about what we're doing here. The other problem I have with some of these approvals of even agricultural products and other chemicals that we're surrounded by is that they really constitute negative externalities on people, they're harming people. And whether and to what extent that is true, we need to know that. And the purpose of government is to stop harms from being done to people. And when you have what looks like something approaching mass poisoning going on, we need our government regulators to be able to sound the alarms about this. Private producers, no matter how wonderful we think they are, should not be allowed to get away with this. But another piece of this really does come down to the household. We have a problem with cell phone addiction among our young people, a lack of physical activity. Kids aren't reading books anymore. AI has made this worse. We just have to get those cell phones out of their hands, send them out, get them in nature, give them real books to read. This is a generational moment. We either turn this around now or really it looks like we're going to be doomed, because the future really does come down to the health and well-being and intelligence of our children.
Now, as you mentioned, the 4 drivers that the report touches on here. Now, President Trump has spoken about bringing back the fitness test in schools. Do you think this latest report sufficiently addresses the issues raised back in May?
Yeah, I like all these things. I really do think half the battle is public awareness here. I don't think that President Trump or RFK or anybody in government has some magic solution that they can, some button they can push to bring about health. Now, some changes would be essential. I think controlling pharmaceutical ads on TV is absolutely essential. Like I'm hoping that's going to happen sooner rather than later, and restricting some of these mRNA vaccines, and I think they're trying to do something to clean up the childhood schedule and so on. But really, it does come down to awareness on the part of parents and in households and in communities and churches. I think up until very recently, I'm sorry to say this, I'm not sure that many people even knew there was a problem. And so what RFK has done under the Trump administration is sounded the alarm. There is a major problem. Here's what we think the problem comes down to. Ultimately, it's going to be up to us to do something about it in our own lives and our own families. And that is what's going to make the change. So I think it's just this change in the public mind, this change in perceptions, the realization that we have an emergency on our hands, and awareness that we do have a means to stop it. I think that's the most important thing, is that educational element. And the bully pulpit of the White House is really helping. But ultimately, if people are ignoring what Maha is saying, the crisis is going to continue. If they look at it and read it, which I think they should, then we could do something to stop this meltdown.
Well, Jeffrey Tucker, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Coming up, Apple unveils its latest product lineup, including the thinnest iPhone yet. David Lamb reports from Cupertino, California. In the NBA, LeBron James' recent op-ed in Chinese state-run media highlights the league's up and down relationship with the CCP. Dave Martin joins us to discuss. And one of NTD's most anticipated contests returns this week. Sherry Ning speaks with one of the judges about what sets the classical Chinese dance competition apart after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Apple unveiled its latest line of products this afternoon. The tech giant's upgraded devices include new AirPods, Apple Watches, and a new version of its flagship iPhone. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Apple announced its anticipated iPhone Air on Tuesday. It's the thinnest iPhone the company has ever created. The tech giant also announced its 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max smartphones. All include improved cameras and longer battery life.
It's just like impressive, a glass built pretty solid phone, and it's one of the most strongest iPhone with one of the most thinnest iPhone yet. So I'm pretty much excited. Even the colors, the golden came back.
Apple says its iPhone Air is 5.6 millimeters thin and is the most power-efficient smartphone with all-day battery life, as well as simultaneous front and rear camera recording.
The thinnest phone ever, plus the software. It competes with the iPad. So I'm pretty much interested to buy it.
Apple's new AirPods Pro 3 come with upgrades. In addition to improved noise cancellation and transparency features, the company's latest wireless headphones can translate conversations for users in real time. Apple also announced a new series of watches with improved durability. The Apple Watch Series 11 will feature a blood pressure monitor pending regulatory approval in the U.S. Pre-orders for the iPhones begin on September 12th. In Cupertino, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in the NBA as Lakers star Lebron James wrote an op-ed in Chinese state media this week saying he hopes basketball can be used as a tool for diplomacy. What kind of relationship does the NBA have with China?
You know, from the outside anyway, I would say tumultuous for sure. I mean, basketball has become pretty popular in China. You know, the NBA is the world's greatest basketball league. Now, the league reportedly has a couple of TV deals with China worth reportedly hundreds of millions of dollars a year. But there seems to be a caveat, and that's that this can be canceled at any time if a member of the league or a team or anything says something the CCP does not like. Now, usually it's about their horrific human rights violations. There have been a couple of incidents, you know, in the last few years. You know, one was in 2019 when Houston Rockets executive Daryl Morey tweeted out "Free Hong Kong" during all those pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. Now, the NBA pulled games there for over a year there. Now, Morey thankfully was not suspended by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. But of course, the league lost hundreds of, or at least millions of dollars, probably hundreds of $millions from that the games being taken off. There was also former NBA player Enos Freedom, who in 2021 and 2022 had those shoes, you see them right there, Stomp on Tyranny, Free Tibet, Free China. Now his Celtics games were then pulled immediately from China, but Freedom actually was then released just a few months later and has not been back in the league. So it seems like pretty much like every other business or political relationship with the CCP, it's really dependent on their silence about China's or the CCP's dealings with their human rights issues and so on with that. I think what most people don't realize though is when you have a business deal with a Chinese company, the CCP is already in them. The government is already in them anyway. So that's something Americans don't always, I don't think, understand. I didn't understand for a long time.
Comes money over morals, it sounds like. Well, shifting gears to the NFL, the league announced that Eagles defensive tackle Jalen Carter will not be suspended for spitting on Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott.
Yeah, Spitgate 2025 here we got. You know, they ruled that Carter basically already, served a one-game suspension since it took place right after the opening kickoff. He was ejected right then, so he never played actually a down there. Now, ESPN is reporting that Carter will forfeit his Week 1 paycheck, works with approximately $57,000, but he will be eligible to play in Week 2 against the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Now, for anyone who missed it, there was an injury timeout right after the opening kickoff, and that's when Dak Prescott and Jalen Carter kind of got in each other's face there. It actually looked like Prescott spit towards Carter first, but it just hit the ground. Then Carter came closer to him and spit right in his face right when the referee walked in front of them. So It's too bad we don't have replay that we can diagnose exactly where the spit was going right there. It was quite a time, though, in an NFL game, I must say.
You also need some Zoom functions for that. Well, elsewhere in the league, kickoff returns were at their highest level in 15 years in week 1. More than 3/4 of kickoffs resulted in a return as opposed to a touchback. What was the reason for that?
Well, in short, rule changes, I would say. Better than 75% of kickoffs last week were returned, like you said. Now, last year, just 1/3 of kickoffs were returned. That was partly by design, though, as studies have shown this is, or was anyway, the most dangerous play in the NFL, mainly because everyone gets a running start before hitting someone at full speed there. So in an effort to combat injuries, years ago, the league started incentivizing teams to not return kickoffs, as opposed to just eliminating the play completely. It's too popular of a play. Now, usually this was through having touchbacks be spotted farther up the field, like the 30-yard line as opposed to the 20. Now, a touchback is just when the ball is kicked off, goes into the end zone, the team does not return it. Last year, though, the league made the kickoff play much safer by having the receiving team line up within 10 yards, or the kicking team line up within 10 yards of the receiving team, except for the kicker, so you didn't get a running start. Now, coaches still preferred the touchback at the 30 last year, so they moved the touchback to the 35-yard line this year. That seems to have solved it. So kickoffs are back. Don't worry, Tiff, that doesn't really play too much into our fantasy football league, just so you know, though. By the way, if you want to trade me Patrick Mahomes, though, you're certainly welcome to.
I think I'm keeping him. Looking at baseball news, the Dodgers lost a pair of no-hitters in the 9th inning over the last 3 days.
Yeah, normally I do not feel sorry for the Dodgers with all their success, but you kind of had to Saturday. Their starting pitcher, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, lost a no-hitter in the 9th inning against the Orioles with 2 outs there when he gave up a solo home run. So he was then taken out of the game with a 3-1 lead, congratulated for his performance, only for the bullpen to come in and give up 3 more runs and lose the game. So the Dodgers were at one point 1 out away from a no-hitter, only to lose the game just a few minutes later. Now, FYI, a no-hitter is when a pitcher allows no hits in a game, of course. Now, last night then, that was Saturday night. Last night, the Dodgers again lost a no-hitter in the 9th inning, this time against the Rockies, who have the worst record in baseball. But this time, the bullpen did come in and at least preserve that 3-1 win. They're now the only team to lose a no-hitter twice in a 3-game span. So tonight they play the Rockies again, hoping for a win, I'm sure, because the Dodgers are 1 game ahead of the Padres in first place in the National League West Division. Tonight's game starts in Los Angeles at 10:15 Eastern Time tonight.
Late night.
Late night.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Tiff.
NTD's International Classical Chinese Dance Competition is returning for its 11th year this week, running from Thursday to Sunday. NTD's Sherry Ning sat down with William Lee, one of this year's judges, for his insights on the ancient art form and this year's contest.
I'm delighted to be joined by William Lee. He's one of the judges this year. He's also a principal dancer with Shenyang Performing Arts. William, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. Now, for our audience who may not be familiar, can you introduce classical Chinese dance to us a little?
Of course, thank you for having me here. Classical Chinese dance is one of the most comprehensive dance systems in the world, and what makes it stick out, it's very technical and very difficult, but the bearing aspect of it, the Shenyang aspect of it, is really different from a lot of other dance forms, and we want to emphasize that inner spirit, the character and integrity of all of our dancers.
Now, how would you say classical Chinese dance is different from Western ballet or other forms of dance?
I think in ballet, it really emphasizes lines. It's also very, very technical, and there's a lot of similarities in that, and it's also very graceful. But in classical Chinese dance, it's again, the bearing, and I think it's the cultural depth as well. It has 5,000 years of history, and it's really absorbed a lot of the essence of the different dynasties in Chinese history. So with such a rich and long history, that's really reflected in the movements in classical Chinese dance. And you see it on stage. What the dancers are depicting is usually these historical themes or these values that traditional Chinese culture emphasizes. These virtues, for example, like loyalty, filial piety, compassion. You're going to see a lot of these themes in classical Chinese dance.
Well, China has been, as we know, under communist rule for a long time. Now, a lot of traditional Chinese culture has been lost or suppressed in the meantime. Has this dance form suffered anything like that?
I think so, especially during the Cultural Revolution. That was when, under communist rule, traditional Chinese culture was being systematically destroyed. Literature, arts, temples were getting smashed, and it's being systematically destroyed. It's not just here and there. It was all planned. And even the arts in China nowadays, a lot of it's kind of used as a tool for propaganda. So it doesn't matter if it's dance, if it's movies, if it's any kind of media that we consume, there's an agenda behind that media, that it's being depicted in China. But here in the West, and especially with Shenyun Performing Arts, I think we're trying to show the world what true traditional China is all about, the real culture of the Chinese people. And one thing that I think really stands out is Chinese history, a cornerstone of it was faith, like Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism. This is really a cornerstone of traditional Chinese history. And in China today, a lot of that is not depicted. But in our dance competition and in Shenyun performance, a lot of that is depicted and shown to the world.
Now, bringing it back to our NTD competition this year, as a judge, what kind of qualities will you be looking for in those performances?
I think the most basic thing for me is shenfa. That's like the foundation of classical Chinese dance. Your movements, your poses has to be precise. So it's like when you speak or when you're giving a presentation, you have to speak clearly for your audience to understand. And then on top of that, I'm looking at your bearing, your shenyun. What are you trying to communicate with the audience? Can you really move the audience? As a judge, am I, moved after watching your performance? I really want to see the audience, the dancers, when they're on stage, they're sincere. So if you're depicting, maybe Yue Fei, he's a character that was known for his loyalty. You had to move me with your loyalty that's depicted on stage.
Lastly, on a more personal note, I know this is the second time that you are judging in this competition. Have you also performed on stage as a contestant yourself?
Yeah, I've competed quite a few times before. I think almost like 5 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so quite a few times I've competed in the competition. So I know how the whole process is, and it's not easy to prepare these pieces and go and compete, putting yourself out there for the world to see. So I really respect a lot of these dancers, and it's great to see so many young people coming to, I guess, like preserving this tradition and culture, and keeping it alive. And also, like, they're very, very talented and amazing dancers. So I'm really happy to see them competing.
And you can watch the competition's semifinals and final on September 13th and 14th, live streamed on NTD or in person at the Sugarloaf Performing Arts Center in New York. For tickets, visit dance.ntdtv.com. And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.